Yeah, it doesn't seem to be that big of a concern to people. And again, I just follow price action. So if you look at the chart, it's clear that we've had this amazing rally in Bitcoin. We've gone all the way back up to the FTX kind of beginning point where that began to kind of collapse. And that's where the resistance point is. So I think this is an area when we go into Genesis where it's going to make people maybe stop and just pause. Let's see how it plays out. But so far,
Right.
we're definitely not seeing a major panic of any sort coming through here. Yeah, so let's jump into the chart here and see what we have. So we can see that there was this wedge pattern from the collapse of FTX, and then we went in a very, very quiet range. And one of the little notes that told us that there was going to be some volatility was that we saw volatility in Bitcoin. I think it got to the lowest it had ever gotten. And anytime you go into this sleep mode, there's this tendency to wake up with a bang. And we certainly saw it here. You could see the breakout occurred right there. And as soon as that happened, there was kind of this melt up or bear market rally. Now, the reason why I'm calling it a bear market rally is that until we take out key levels, this is just a run of the mill, rip your face off rally. And I know that sounds crazy to a lot of Bitcoiners and crypto people, but if you look at other markets, the S&P, the NASDAQ, even stocks like Tesla, a bounce of 25, 35, 45% in a bear market is actually a relatively common occurrence. So as of now, I think we've rallied about 30, 35% in Bitcoin off of the lows. At this point, we still haven't taken out the psychological level here, which was the FTX high. And you can see how price is stalled there, right? And we're even seeing a little bit of a pullback today, although we're off of the lows. But for me, at least, this is, as of now, it's a bear market rally. I have to treat it as such until we start taking out key levels such as this FTX high pivot. Yeah, so definitely that FTX high pivot, which is around 21,500. Psychologically, there was a lot of damage done. We know about all the news media, that the coverage that SBF had and FTX collapse had. And I think on a psychological basis, if we can get price above and hold above that level, that then would then create kind of this confidence in Bitcoin, in cryptocurrency. Another thing that I'll be watching for is, honestly, I want to see where this regulation is coming in. I want to see when this is coming to fruition. If we get regulation and price doesn't dump out and make new lows, I would then say potentially the lows could be in. And the reason I say that is because as soon as we get that regulation, it should create forced transparency. And forced transparency then creates the ability for bigger money to start to take positions. And if we're still trading up here into that, I think the lows might be in. I still am in the camp, though. Let's be clear. I'm still in the bear market camp. I still think this is a run-of-your-mill bear market rally, and I still think we'll make new lows. If you see the stock market collapse 25% in 2023, it's hard to imagine Bitcoin's not going to come back down and retest those lows. But for me, certainly, I mean, you start to see a weakening dollar. That helps. Gold price has really soared recently as well. That's telling you people are definitely looking for an alternative to US dollars. And in many ways, I think to stocks. I mean, I think there's this growing realization that the economy will go into recession in 2023. And what does that mean for earnings for stocks and the valuations as well? So I think, again, Bitcoin is the one that people are going to go to if they're going to choose a crypto. And I'm not surprised to see that accumulation going on. Yeah, so let's take a look at the chart on Meta and see what it's telling us here. And again, one of the things that catches my eye on Meta is that we've been in this downsloping trend line here, and we finally broke above it right over here. And again, for me, this doesn't mean we're in a new bull market for Meta. It just means there's a floor in price, meaning that this yellow line now becomes technical support. So for me, at least, what I would be doing is looking for a pullback into that level, which right now is around 113. And I think that's a buyable level on Meta. Now, again, I think Meta is kind of a unique case because it was already pounded down so much going into this kind of bear market. We saw it, obviously, it's corrected immensely over the last, basically 18 months or so. So I think the better case to look at for stocks is let's take a look at Apple. And this is a concern for me on Apple, right? So if you look at this bigger trend line that goes back to 2020, look at how price kept hammering and hammering and hammering, and then it broke. And if you look at where the market was when it started to reverse today, Apple was piercing that level, which again was support over here. It's now resistance. So it slammed into that and got pushed back down. And oftentimes when you see this chart set up, the resulting move is a move down like
Right.
this. So again, for me, if I'm looking at the S&P 500, I'm also very concerned because you have this down sloping trend line, and look at where price was just into today's sell-off, right into this down sloping trend line.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm expecting as much as a 25% drawdown in the S&P in 2023. And that's one of the reasons why I think it's going to be hard for crypto to really hold on to its gains if we're seeing that type of drawdown in stocks. Yeah, and that's a tricky thing, right? So my forecasts are saying that the Fed has one or two more rate hikes in them, probably both 25 basis points, and then they're done. And we saw some economic news this morning that was very, very weak. It does portend to show a recession on the horizon. We just haven't seen the jobs market catch up yet, and I think that's going to be one of the realizations for the markets. Now, initially, you're going to see investors cheer because the Fed is going to go back to a neutral policy, which means they're not hiking, but they're not dropping. I think that ultimately the market in the second half of the year is going to start to get very scared over the aspect that inflation remains above 2% and the Fed cannot stimulate even in a recession, right? So if we slip into this recession, my fear is it becomes a long recession, a multi-year recession, because the Fed's not bailing us out due to inflation staying slightly elevated. Well, I think one of the things to recognize too for investors is that while the markets have declined historically, if we look at bear markets, this isn't that big of a decline. The S&P is not even down right now 20% from its all-time highs. And remember, the move from 2009 to these all-time highs, or from the COVID low to these all-time highs, was probably the biggest move we have almost ever seen in the stock market, at least reminiscent of the dot-com bubble move up in charts. So I do caution people that at least in the very least, you got to think we have to head down to that February 2020 high, which was just before that COVID collapse. In the very least, that kind of is the removal of the liquidity put in during COVID. Let's take a look here and see. So one of the things I've noticed about XRP is that we've seen a lot of big moves up in crypto, but XRP has not had a huge move considering some of the altcoin moves, right? I mean, if you look at a Solana, an Avalanche, even a Cardano has had a very significant percentage move up, while you're pretty much stuck at under 20% move up in XRP. Now, like you said, I think the reasoning for that is that there's a lack of buyers. They're waiting to see what the outcome of this judge's decision is, and they're not willing to put big money behind it, right? So I think that's kind of alluding to that aspect. But one of the things I'll be watching for is you have this pattern here, this little wedge pattern, and we're stuck between support and resistance, basically resistance being around 42 to 43 cents and support being around 34 cents. And so I'll be watching very closely to see can XRP in the next week or so break above. If you get a breakout going into the judge's decision, maybe it implies that there's someone that knows something, that it's going to be a positive decision, and that could be a positive signal there. Yeah, so ETH has had a great move up. Same kind of issue though here as with Bitcoin, right? Here's your kind of pivot high just before the FTX kind of debacle occurred, and we see that big drop. And notice how price has gotten up there and is just having so much trouble getting through that level. So for me, I'll be watching this approximately $1,650 level, $1,650 on Ethereum. Again, I like the fact that it may be consolidating in a bullish manner, but it is still technically extended on the chart, and it still needs to kind of digest this move up before I get more confidence that it can break out. But again, I think one of the things to keep in mind, folks, is that, for me, it's the best of breed. So Ethereum and Bitcoin, if you're going to hold crypto into kind of maybe regulation or whatever it may be, those are the ones to do it with, because I do think they'll survive and thrive in a post-regulatory environment. The other ones I would just be generally cautious on. They're more for allocating the proper amount of investment so that if something does go wrong, such as an FTX or something else, you don't get hammered too badly. So again, right now, I honestly couldn't tell you. I don't know if they'll pop it up to touch that 17 level or pierce that 1650 before they bring it back in. We did see a little bit of selling today. There was, I think, a DOJ announcement about a crypto player out there, but it didn't turn out to be anything major for the crypto industry. So price has come back up. But I still think that we are short-term overbought. And I do worry that if the stock market, which is down pretty decently today, if we start seeing spillover where that market goes down more and more, I do think it bleeds into crypto and brings crypto in.
Sure.
Yeah, so both are creating potential bull flags. Again, it's still tough to know because they're both extended. But if we were to get up a move on Bitcoin, let's say to 25,000, I would dare say that Ethereum would probably at least test 2,000 on the charts, maybe even slightly above 2,000. So again, that would be, by the way, if you get to the 2,000 level, that's your August 22 high pivot right above 2,000 on ETH. So that would probably be where I would be looking for it.